everyone, and welcome back. Today's story matters more than ever. We're all standing at a hinge moment in global history where economics, geopolitics, and technology are colliding in a way that we haven't seen since the end of the Cold War. And Canada's voice at this year's APEC Summit was clear, confident, and absolutely future-focused. We're going to dig into Carney's remarks at the APEC Summit and discuss what all was said. Now, it's important to mention that many parties were present at this meeting, various countries, and many conversations happened. So in this video, we're going to discuss the Carney's remarks at the summit itself. As for this one, Carney once again comes forth with an eloquent and mildly philosophical speech, data-backed, which of course I like. Let's walk through it clip by clip and explore what it says about where Canada is headed in the world.
Growth that excludes is growth that divides. He continued, division causes instability, and instability is not conducive to peace and prosperity. And we're here, of course, for peace and prosperity. The spirit of partnership and shared growth is what brings us together at the APEC Summit, a forum to strengthen and deepen cooperation in the world's most dynamic region in order for growth to benefit all of our peoples. And that's why 35 years ago, Canada became one of the founding members of APEC. We joined for the same reason that I and we are here now, because we believe deeply and consistently in what APEC stands for. Shared prosperity, grounded in rules-based trade and international cooperation. At that first APEC meeting in 1993, first meeting of APEC leaders then, it was more or less in the immediate aftermath of the Cold War, and nations recognized that by working together, they could build a new foundation for growth across the Asia-Pacific, one that could harness the region's energy, strengthen cooperation, and expand that prosperity for all. That was a hinge moment. That was a choice. That was a choice that those leaders took. And today, we're facing another hinge moment in history.
Now, when I hear the line that growth that excludes is growth that divides, I don't just hear economic philosophy, I hear a call to action and frankly, a bit of a warning. Because exclusion, whether it's economic, social, or geopolitical, doesn't just stunt growth, it fuels division, and he's right. And division, as Mark Carney puts it so plainly, leads to instability. That's something we're all watching play out, especially in how major economies are choosing their paths right now. I have to say, from the outside looking in, Canada's message at APEC stands out. It's measured, it's principled, and perhaps most importantly, it's consistent. When you compare that to the more erratic behavior that we've seen from the United States in recent years or weeks, the contrast can be a bit striking. The US, for all of its strengths, has become a more volatile actor on the world stage. Trade policy can flip with an election or a weekend or an ad. Comments to allies and global institutions can be walked back overnight. And for smaller or mid-sized economies trying to plan long-term partnerships, that becomes a bit of a problem. To be clear, I'm not saying the relationship between the US and the rest of the world is broken, far from it, not yet at least, but it is complicated and it's no longer something the world can take for granted. That's why speeches like this one matter, because when Canada talks about rule-based trade and shared prosperity, it's not just idealism anymore, but it turns into strategy. And it's rooted in a worldview that Mark Carney, among others, has articulated beautifully, that economies work best when they're anchored in values and not just velocity. 35 years ago, actually, in the wake of the Cold War, APEC was born out of hope for exactly that kind of cooperation. And this speech recognizes that we're now at another historical crossroads, a hinge moment, as he calls it. The old post-Cold War world is behind us, but what comes next, what kind of global system we build from here, well, that is still open. And here's what I personally find hopeful. Canada, even as a middle power right now, is leaning into this moment. It's not retreating. It's offering steadiness, trust, and a real commitment to the spirit of cooperation. That kind of leadership might not always make the headlines, although we've had quite a few headlines recently. But in a world as unstable as ours, the spirit of cooperation matters a huge amount. Quick word, if you find this kind of analysis valuable, there are two ways to support this channel. I've got a book on critical thinking coming out this weekend. Link is in the description. Probably tomorrow. I'm rushing so much to get it out. If you sign up, I'll send you a discount when it drops. And if books aren't your thing, but you still want to keep this kind of work going, there's a Ko-fi link down below as well. Every bit helps. Let's check out the next bit of Carney's speech.
So our government is charting a new course with an ambitious mission to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade. And we're already making significant progress. In the past few months, we've signed new agreements with the UAE in artificial intelligence infrastructure, with the European Union in defense and trade, with Germany in critical minerals. Earlier this week in Kuala Lumpur, we agreed with the ASEAN nations to intensify and finalize the discussions for the Canada-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement next year. We're launching new bilateral free trade agreement talks with the Philippines and Thailand, which again we plan to complete over the course of the next year.
Now, this is the kind of trade strategy that feels less like a tactical shift and more like a full-on stage pivot. Canada is actively reducing its over-reliance on the US market and doing so not out of hostility, but out of just realism. As an outside observer, I find this refreshingly pragmatic. The goal to double non-US exports in the next decade is ambitious, but the groundwork is clearly underway, from artificial intelligence partnerships with the UAE to critical minerals with Germany and expanded trade frameworks with ASEAN and beyond. What's impressive is not just the diversity of partners, Europe, Southeast Asia, the Gulf states, but the sectors involved as well. AI, infrastructure, defense, energy transition, these are the defining areas of the 21st century competitiveness, and Canada is placing itself right at the crossroads of each. It's a forward-looking portfolio that echoes the kind of thinking Mark Carney has championed before as well, building resilient, values-aligned economies that aren't overexposed to any single partner or market. And then there's the how. These aren't rush deals or transactional alignments. They're rooted in shared interest and long-term collaboration. The idea of bridging CPTPP and the EU, check out that video, we've discussed this before, for example, is a powerful one. That's the architecture of a new multilateralism, an ecosystem of like-minded democracies pushing back gently but firmly against the fragmentation that we've seen elsewhere. While other economies are doubling down on protectionism or populism, hint, hint, Canada is doing the opposite. It's expanding its circle and not tightening it. That's what makes this moment so hopeful to me. This is not just trade diversification, but it's also a bet on openness, on cooperation, and on trust. Beautiful values, honestly. And in a time when many global powers are becoming less predictable, that kind of steady, values-driven leadership matters more than ever. Let's check out the next bit.
We are an energy superpower, with the third largest reserves of oil and the fourth largest reserves of natural gas. This past June, we shipped our first major LNG exports to Asia. We're making major investments in streamlining approvals, so we're going to scale up quickly. By 2030, Canada will produce 50 million tons of LNG each year, all destined for Asian markets. By 2040, we will double that amount, at least. Domestically, we have an electricity grid that is 85% clean energy, and we have plans to increase that by 50%, including through new nuclear, both utility scale and the world's first commercial SMRs. This will power clean manufacturing, AI and intelligence infrastructure, and the electrification of our sustainable economy. Moving further up the supply chain, we're amongst the top 5 producers of 10 critical minerals essential for the energy transition, amongst other applications. So we're fast-tracking new mines and producing to meet demands. We just made announcements. I'll get my time zone right. I'm going to front-run my Minister of Natural Resources now. We're about to make announcements in Toronto at the G7 Plus Energy Summit, Critical Minerals Summit, of over 20 new investments, deals in critical minerals, totaling almost $2 billion of support, and that's just the start. Canada is positioned to be amongst the global leaders in clean technology, artificial intelligence, life sciences, and quantum computing, backed by more than 2 million STEM graduates driving innovation every day, the most educated workforce in the world per capita, and financed by deep expertise and capabilities in financial services. I'll mention 2 aspects of that. First, in our mining sector, 40% of all listed mining companies in the world are listed in Canada. And our pension funds are amongst the largest in the world, controlling $3 trillion of capital, already major infrastructure investors across the APEC economies. With the strongest balance sheet and the best tax treatment for new investment in the G7, and trade agreements spanning 1.5 billion consumers from the EU to CPTPP, we're mobilizing $1 trillion of generational investments over the next 5 years in Canada, in our ports, in our energy and systems, in our digital infrastructure that will power our future. Now, part of our core offering, part of our core foundation for these investments is to provide you and investors and business people the certainty and reliability that you crave and deserve. You crave in an uncertain world, you deserve at all times. And part of our offering is to live the values of sustainability, inclusivity to which the world aspires. You all know that certainty is the greatest currency in commerce. And its certainty comes not only from agreements, but also from trust. From partners who don't just respect the letter, but the spirit and the values behind agreements. That's Canada.
Now, there is something quietly powerful about the way Canada lays all of this out, not with bombast, but with clarity. This section is more than just brag reel about natural resources or STEM degrees. It's a statement of purpose. Mark Carney is essentially saying, we have what the world needs, but more importantly, we know how to deliver it responsibly. In an era where energy security, digital infrastructure, and climate resilience are no longer optional, that combination matters. From LNG exports to clean electricity, from critical minerals to the world's first commercial SMRs, Canada is showing that it can move at a scale without abandoning sustainability, and that is rare. Most countries with this level of natural wealth tend to lean towards extraction-first logic, as Canada has done for a long time. But here the framing is growing in a different direction. It becomes about building, partnering, and creating certainty for investors, for communities, and for future generations. That kind of thinking reflects exactly the kind of values-based capitalism that Mark Carney has been advocating for: inclusive, sustainable, and long-term. What also stands out to me here is the focus on trust, and this is something that I've been yapping about a lot in other videos as well. The idea that certainty is the greatest currency in commerce is both understated, but also deeply, deeply true. In a world where authoritarian powers use trade as leverage, and where even traditional allies are prone to sudden shifts, the value of a stable, rules-respecting partner like Canada becomes more and more obvious. And it's not just talk. This is backed by actual capital, actual trade deals, and a vision that stretches beyond election cycles. So yes, the world is shifting, and no, there's no going back to the post-Cold War consensus. But what's emerging instead is something just as powerful, in my view: a coalition of democratic economies that are ready to build something better. And Canada, from what I can see, is ready to help lead that charge, not by dominating, but by anchoring. That gives me a lot of hope, to be honest. So as Canada lays out this bold, values-driven strategy from trade to energy to innovation, it's clear that they're not just reacting to global change, but rather helping shape what comes next. In a time when so many economies are retreating or reacting, Canada is offering something rare: stability with ambition. And that deserves more attention than it usually gets. What do you think, though? Can Canada really become a global anchor in this uncertain moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to keep tracking how these shifts play out, don't forget to subscribe. There is a lot more ahead. As always, pay attention, stay curious, and stay nuanced.